The following Nasdaq Behind the Bell podcast was recorded live at the 2017 NRF Annual Convention and Expo, retail's big show at the Jacob K. Javits Convention Center in New York City. Here are your Nasdaq hosts, Bradley Smith and Josh Matches.
Today we're going to take it one step further. We're going to kind of dive in to the research side of things with our first conversation here today, featuring Mark Mathews, VP of Research Development and Industry Analysis at NRF. Mark, great to have you here.
It's my pleasure. Very happy to be here. And just wanted to quickly add that I'm also a former NASDAQ, 12 years there,
yeah.
So I feel part of the club.
Hashtag Team NASDAQ.
Right? This is it's a NASDAQ reunion.
Awesome. So you could probably teach us a few things that we didn't even know about NASDAQ.
Probably not. It's been a while.
Okay. Well, you have to know where you came from to know where you're going sometimes. So we need to get that history. Absolutely. So how have you been enjoying the event so far?
It's been amazing. There's so many people here. I'm amazed, and I'm really amazed at how many different accents and languages I'm hearing here. There's a big international contingent. The sessions that I've been to have been incredibly well attended. One of them was pretty much standing room only.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been amazing. Really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the events here are staying room only. It's packed.
Yeah.
It's been packed every day.
And you talk about some of the international audiences that are here. Every now and again we see this huge swarm of people that kind of move all around us, and they're going to a bunch of the different booths, and you see they've got the headphones on, and everything's being translated for them. And I think it was yesterday when it was Size Right that had a swarm of people go over to their booth, and we actually had their founder in here with us. We were like, we might have to let you go a little bit soon. But it's amazing to see that pickup that's being generated here, beyond just the U.S. and kind of our reach, and it's being taken to that outside the U.S. borders, if you will.
Absolutely, and it speaks to the diversity of the retail industry. I mean, it's such an incredibly diverse ecosystem, and NRF has 10,000 members, and they represent so many different segments, and it's amazing. I've worked in other industries, but nothing is quite as diverse and interesting as retail. I find it fascinating.
Absolutely. So you told us about NASDAQ. That's your past. What are you currently doing at NRF? What's your role, your title, your function? What's going on there?
Sure. So prior to my joining, research was sort of disaggregated across NRF. The various vertical silos did their own research, and a couple of years ago, the board took a decision to centralize the entire research function. So they brought me on board to help make that happen, to make sure that the research that we're doing is closely aligned with what our members want to hear about, that is closely aligned to our strategy, and that we're not off doing niche little pieces of research that only matter to a small amount of people. We want to make sure that the retail industry gets bang for its buck, that we are doing things that matter to everybody.
And how do the members utilize the research that you provide?
In many different ways. We do many types of research. We do advocacy research. For example, if there's a law that looks like it might happen that's going to impact on our retailers, we'll do research there and help them lobby on Capitol Hill to make sure that their interests are taken into consideration. We also do a lot of benchmarking. We help retailers understand where they fit amongst their peers, how they're performing across a bunch of different areas. We also do a lot of consumer research to let the retailers know what the consumer is thinking, how they're behaving, what the trends are, how much they're spending around certain events like holidays and stuff like that. And finally, we do economic research. We project retail sales. We look at the importance of retail to the economy overall.
Can individual retailers use you guys for perhaps a study, or is it that you guys provide the data along the things that you've come up with, and then the retailers kind of use that data?
They can certainly come to us and suggest stuff, and I would encourage any retailer listening to please do that.
No, because it's hard as a retailer to get objective research, right? And
absolutely.
If you're not getting it from a third party, you're sort of just saying, "Oh, we're doing great because we're doing great," but that isn't necessarily always the story.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of retailers, they do a lot of their own research, but what they see is, within their own box. They see their own data, they see their own customer. What we try to do is bring that broader industry perspective. What's happening? What are the trends? Where are things going? What should they be thinking about? That sort of thing to help them, think on a broader level about what might be around the corner for them.
Right. And this is research that moves markets as well. You were discussing earlier and mentioned earlier how this research and economic data all helps some of the framework that we're seeing from an overall spending perspective for the U.S. and even beyond, really. And I know we in particular, we look at it from a social and a broadcast standpoint, because it helps kind of give us some framework to the chatter that we're seeing online, on social, what some of the biggest holiday trends are, for instance, going into some of the big shopping seasons and coming out of it. It's interesting to see how your research and the actual findings afterwards are helping kind of add a little bit more color to the story, because we've got the projection side going into it, and then out of it, it's what actually happened. So what kind of goes into that forecasting side of things that you're doing?
Well, first, let me step back and say that it does move markets. And we're aware of that, and that's a responsibility that I take very, very deeply, especially as a former stock market guy. It's important stuff. And we have a chief economist, who's part of the team, and he has a very highly developed model that looks at retail sales and forecasts retail sales for us. So it's something that's I think is critical. The data that we look at, the data that we rely on, has to be accurate. It has to appropriately reflect our industry. And that's a hard thing, because the retail industry is constantly evolving. It's changing. Right. And we rely on government data to an extent. And frankly, some of the approaches to collecting that data is archaic. Right. And in some cases, it doesn't really reflect our industry in the way that we see our industry now. And the big challenge for us is to make sure that the data that's going out to the analysts and everyone else is data that really, really reflects the diversity and evolution of the retail industry. That's something that I take to heart personally.
So when you're running these forecasting calculations and you get to your overall conclusion about what we should expect for the upcoming quarter, the upcoming shopping season. Is there ever a time where you look at the data and you say there's no way that consumer expenditures could be growing by that much?
Are there times that I get worried? If I'm perfectly honest, yes. But, the most important thing is to have robust systems, a robust model in place, and to believe it. Yeah. Now, that isn't to say that things don't change. Honestly, we put out our retail forecast, and then the election happened. Yeah. And, the lead up to the election, you could see the consumer was worried. You could see that they were not necessarily stepping into the marketplace. And post-election, when we got the big surprise we did, we got even more worried. Yeah. But, I've looked at research that says that, consumers might say that they're nervous, but the reality, the reality of the matter is that when they step into the store, especially around the holidays, you may have been nervous 5 minutes ago, but, when you step in the store, you're nervous about delivering what your kid wants for Christmas, what your wife wants for Christmas, and that becomes the overarching, priority. Right. So it's really, although there might be some concern going in, generally speaking, holiday spending will hold up unless there's some real economic issues. And we did not see any of those deep economic issues coming in. We saw, consumer disposable income at all-time highs. We saw employment high. We saw all the indicators were strong. It's just that the consumer was feeling a little bit nervous. And, on balance, we felt like, we would hit our number 4.0, and we hit our number 4.0 right on the money. So I'm proud of that on behalf of our chief economist. Yeah.
Well, now with Inauguration Day on Friday, do you have kind of any research or insights into how retail will perform under the new administration?
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's what we really want to see.
That's what we really want. That's what our podcast listeners want. The real insights.
I think there's a real challenge here, and that challenge is that a lot of people are unsure, which way this administration is going. There's a lot of talk about, what might be done and what might be done. Are there things on the horizon that worry us? Absolutely. There are lots of things that we'd want to be cautious about, but really, you almost have to throw that stuff out the window and look at the fundamentals, and that's what we do. We look at the fundamentals, and economically, we're in a strong position. We're near full employment. The consumer sentiment is pretty strong right now. The stock market is breaching all-time highs.
Yeah.
And that, as you guys know, plays a big role in the way that people spend and the way that they feel about spending. So I'm positive going into this in this next year. I think there are certain challenges, but overall, things look strong.
So, we may not get the exact answer to your question, Josh, but what we can talk about, which is kind of a micro force within that, is consumer maturation. What are you saying in terms of how some of the baby boomers are adjusting their spending habits? Perhaps millennials are adjusting theirs, and even as far as Gen Z. What are you seeing from that perspective?
Yeah, well, I see. Millennials have been, all the rage recently. The Pew put out some research saying, that they're now the biggest segment, and retailers have been coming to grips with that audience. The baby boomers are like the cash cow, right? They're out there. They continue to spend. What really interested us is, what's coming on the wave behind these millennials, and that's why we did this Gen Z research, because it's fascinating. These are not millennials, and I think a lot of people view Gen Z as younger millennials. These are not millennials. Yeah. These are kids who have grown up differently. They've grown up with one, if not two, devices in their hands. Right. They grew up through the greatest financial crisis we've seen since 1929. Right. They have a template out there. They see other people of their age, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, making millions. To quote a number from our study, 22% of Gen Z earn money online. They're very pragmatic. They're very financially savvy. And they are a spending force to be reckoned with. $44 billion of spending power, but they influence almost $200 billion almost $900 billion in spending power. So, wow. It's funny because I'm an older guy. Listeners can't tell that, but
he looks 29. Everybody.
Thank you very much. When my parents bought a couch. I didn't get any say in that, but nowadays, when I bought a couch a couple of years, my 9-year-old son was probably the driving force behind that purchase. And that's, we coddle our kids these days, and they have a tremendous impact on what gets bought in the household. So they have income, which is important, and they spend a lot of that income, but they spend that income on the stuff they like. Clothes, toys, entertainment. Where they influence the family spending is on household items, groceries, furniture, and stuff like that. So they play a big role.
Oh, absolutely.
So Gen Z is still young, but can you get some kind of insights into their future spending patterns? Are they going to be vastly different than the way millennials spend?
I think not necessarily in what they buy, but in how they transact. They communicate with brands in a different way. Back in my day, you'd flip through the phone book, you'd pick up the phone, you'd call the retailer. They don't do that. They hit the retailer up on Twitter, and then they expect an immediate response. They don't have the patience that a lot of people have. If you ever, if you're in a grocery line and you see a mom standing there with her arms folded, patiently waiting for the cashier, and her little 9 or 10-year-old there stamping their legs saying, "Why can't this happen faster?" Right. That's the way that Gen Z feels about this. They want it to be quick. They want it to be seamless. It's different from what we've seen before.
Absolutely.
fascinating.
Yeah, and I think with some of the vendors that we're looking at around here, that checkout process might become just a little bit quicker, especially as we've heard a lot of the companies that are here on site so much focused on the consumer shopping experience, making sure that, maybe a company like Amazon is a prime example of somebody who's already testing the waters in that, and we mentioned this yesterday, in that simple walk-out process.
Yeah.
Where you've got what you need, just walk out the store. We'll charge you. We'll get ours, but
Exactly.
they're improving an experience and redefining exactly what the process should be from the moment a customer steps in the store to the moment they walk out. So
absolutely, and I think Gen Z doesn't understand how difficult it is to make some of this stuff happen, to make buy online, pick up in store happen. You have to have systems talking to each other. You need to have great inventory
They
control.
grew up with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they just expect it
They
to
just
happen.
take more and more
they
for
don't
granted.
Care. And our study
I think
shows
it's just magic.
our study shows that 60 more than 60% of them, if you've got an app that's slow or a website that's loading slow or a hard to navigate website, boom, they're gone. They've moved on
they
to
don't
the next
even
person.
they don't even watch videos in the way that
Yeah.
millennials watched videos.
Yeah, 44% of them watch TV. That's an amazing thing, and that's again something from a marketing standpoint that people need to be thinking about. How do you market to these things, and how do you bring them to you? Some of the brands that I've talked to have talked about, our brand might not resonate with Gen Z. We're never going to bring them over. We're seen as their parents' brand. What we've got to do is we've got to start associating with the things that they think is cool. We've got to be at Coachella. We've got to be at events that they think are cool, so our brand can be associated with those cool things, rather than trying to sell Gen Z that, oh yeah, we may have catered to your mom, but we're also cool for you.
And it's interesting that you say that, because there's a lot of research that's saying that maybe the reason to market to Gen Z is not so much that you actually have a relationship with them in a marketing perspective, but that you're making an affinity for your brand, like that affinity that you can't possibly get. That why is Mercedes marketing to Gen Z? Well, because one day that person's going to grow up and want a Mercedes-Benz, and if they don't, it's because Mercedes didn't get in early enough.
Right. Absolutely, and again, you hit on a great point. That's the reason we're talking about Gen Z right now, because this is the future of retail. In a few years, they're going to be in their prime spending power, and honestly, they will not be behaving like the people that went before them. Yeah. You have to rethink the way that you connect with them. You have to rethink the way that your product assortment. Gen Z does not want to go out and buy a shirt off of a rack of 100 shirts that all look the same. They want individualism. One of the things the study found is that they shop in store more than you'd expect them to, and the reason they do is they love the thrill of the hunt. They love the social aspect of going out there, but they want to find that unique thing, and brands need to be thinking about that. They need to be thinking about
back to brick and mortar.
Yeah, absolutely, and they also need to be thinking about allowing co-creation. Gen Z loves to co-create. They want to. They don't want the shirt you're pushing on me. They want a shirt that they can collaborate in and help make what it looks like. So one of our retailers said millennials would tell us okay, I see the product, tell me how to wear it. Gen Z are like, no, don't tell me anything about it. I want to be part of that process.
Right, they're the creator generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. So closing thoughts, Mark, in terms of the next 12 to 18 months, any broad scale predictions as to what we'll see from shopping perspective? Josh hit it earlier. I'm just prying back at it again.
Yeah. Again, I have to go back to the economic fundamentals, and I think the economic fundamentals look strong. But I know that if our chief economist was sitting next to me, he'd be kicking me in the knee because our models rely on the most recent data, and the most recent data it's hard to project for. It's hard to say what's going to happen
Right.
6 months from now.
We got you, Mark. We're asked for market tips all the time.
Well, if you look at the history of my stock performance, you'd know that you're probably wasting your time in terms of asking me for tips. So.
That's the sell strategy from Mark right there. Excellent. Well, great to have you on Behind the
pleasure.
Bell podcast today, Mark. Thanks for a lot of the insights that you've provided us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mark.
it.
And thanks for everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned. We're going to be coming right back at you from the NRF Innovation Lab. Stay tuned.